Now it comes. Now it comes. Now I understand everything. You think I have contacts with the Americans?
You may, it's just conceivable. If anyone in occupied Europe does, it will be you.
So you do want to know about an Allied nuclear program?
I simply want to know if there is one. Some hint, some clue. I've just betrayed my whole country and risked my life to warn you of the German program.
And now I'm to return the compliment?
Bohr, I have to know. If the Allies are building a bomb, what am I choosing for my country? You said it would be an easy mistake to make, to think that one would have less love for one's country if it was small and defenseless. And yes, it would be another easy mistake to make, to think that one loved one's country less simply because it happened to be in the wrong. But Germany is where I was born. Germany is where I became what I am. Germany is all the faces of my childhood. All the hands that picked me up when I fell. All the voices that encouraged me and set me on my way. Germany is my widowed mother and my impossible brother. Germany is my wife. Germany's our children. I have to know what I'm deciding for them. Is it another defeat? Another nightmare like the nightmare I grew up with? Are more children going to starve as we did? Are more children going to have to spend winter nights as I did? Crawling on my hands and knees through the enemy lines, out in the under cover of darkness, to find food for my family? Are they going to have to stay up all night, as I did when I was 17, guarding some terrified prisoner, talking to him and talking through the small hours, because he's going to be executed in the morning?
Dear Heisenberg, I have nothing to tell you. I have no idea whether the Americans are working on a bomb.
It's just getting underway even as we speak. Maybe I'm choosing something even worse than defeat, because the bomb they're building is intended to be used on us. It was Oppenheimer's one regret on the night of Hiroshima, that they hadn't produced the bomb in time to use on Germany.
He tormented himself afterwards.
Afterwards, yes. At least we tormented ourselves a little beforehand. Did a single one of them stop to think, even for one brief moment, about what they were doing? Did Oppenheimer, did Fermi, or Teller, or Szilard? Did Einstein, when he wrote to Roosevelt in 1939 and urged him to finance research on the bomb? Did you, when you escaped Copenhagen 2 years later and went to Los Alamos?
My dear Heisenberg, we weren't supplying the bomb to Hitler.
You weren't dropping it on Hitler either! You were dropping it on anyone who was in reach. On old men and women and the children? On the streets, on mothers and their children? You never have the slightest conception of what happens when bombs are dropped on cities. None of you ever experienced it. Not a single one of you. I walked home from the center of Berlin one night to the suburbs after one of the big raids. Whole city on fire. No transport moving, of course. Even the puddles in the streets are burning. They're puddles of molten phosphorus. It gets on your shoes like some sort of incandescent dog mug. I have to keep scraping it off. It's as if the streets have been fouled by the hounds of hell. You would have laughed. My shoes keep bursting into flame. And I suppose people are trapped. People in various stages of burning to death. And of course, all I can think about is, how will I ever get another pair of shoes in times like these?
You know why the Allies were working on a bomb?
Of course. Fear.
The same fear that was consuming you. Because they were worried that you were working on it.
But Bohr, you could have told them.
Told them what?
What I told you in 1941. That the decision is in our hands, in mine, in Oppenheimer's.
Dear Heisenberg, so you don't want me to tell you what they are doing? You want me to stop them?
To tell them we can stop it together.
I had no contact with the Americans.
You did with the British.
Only later.
The Gestapo intercepted the message you sent them about our meeting.
And passed it to you.
Why not? They'd begun to trust me. That's how I was able to remain in control of events.
My dear Heisenberg, if this is your plan in coming to Copenhagen, well, it's most interesting.
It's not a plan. It's a hope. Not even a hope. A microscopically fine thread of possibility. Worth trying, though, Bohr. Worth trying, certainly. But already you're too angry to understand what I'm saying.
No. Why he's angry is because he is beginning to understand. The Germans drive out some of their best physicists because they're Jews. America and Britain give them sanctuary. Now it turns out this might offer the old allies a hope of salvation. And at once you come howling to Niels, begging him to persuade them to give it up.
My love, perhaps we should learn to express ourselves a little more temperately.
The gall of it. The sheer breathtaking gall of it.
It It is bold skiing, I have to say.
But Bohr, we're not skiing now. We're not playing table tennis. We're not juggling with cat pistols and non-existent cards. I refuse to believe it. When I first heard the news of Hiroshima, I thought it was one of the strange dreams we were living in at the time. They got stranger and stranger, God knows, as Germany fell into ruins in those last months of the war. But by then, we were living in the strangest of them all. Suddenly, the ruins vanish, as things do in dreams, and I'm in a stately home in the middle of the English countryside. We've been rounded up by the British, the whole German nuclear team, everyone who worked on atomic research, and we've been spirited away to Farm Hall in Huntingdonshire in the water meadows of the River Ouse. Our families in Germany are starving, and here we are, sitting down to a formal dinner each evening with our charming host, the British officer in charge of us. It's like a pre-war house party. One of those house parties you might find in a play that's cut off entirely from the outside world, where all the guests have been invited for some secret, sinister purpose. No one knows we're there, no one in England, no one in Germany. But the war's over. What's happening? Perhaps as in a play, we're all going to be quietly murdered one by one. In the meanwhile, it's all delightfully civilized. I entertained the party with Beethoven piano sonatas. Major Rittner, our hospitable jailer, reads Dickens to us to improve our English. Did these things really happen to me? We wait for the point of it all to be revealed to us. Then one night it is. It's on the radio. It's even more grotesque than the one we were fearing. You had done the deed that we were tormenting ourselves about. We had no idea how far you got. I can't describe the effect it had on us. I refuse to believe it when Major Rittner tells us, until I hear it with my own ears on the 9 o'clock news. You play happily with your toy cat pistol, then someone else picks it up and pulls the trigger, and suddenly there's blood everywhere and people screaming. We stay up half the night talking about it, trying to take it in. We're all literally in shock.
Because it had been done, or because it wasn't you who had done it?
Both. Otto Hahn wants to kill himself because it was he who discovered fission. Gerlach, our old Nazi coordinator, also wants to die because his hands are so shamefully clean. You've done it, though. You've built the bomb.
Yes.
And dropped it on a living target.
On a living target, yes.
You're not saying that Niels did anything wrong in working at Los Alamos.
No, Bohr has never done anything wrong.
The decision had been made before he arrived. The bomb would have been built whether he'd been there or not.
In any case, my part was very small.
Oppenheimer said you acted as the team's father confessor.
Well, it seems to be my role in life.
He said you made a great contribution.
Spiritual, possibly, not practical.
Fermi says it was you who figured out how to trigger the Nagasaki bomb.
I put forward an idea.
You're not implying that Niels has anything to explain or defend.
No, he's a profoundly good man.
It's not a question of goodness. I was simply spared the decision.
And I was not. So explaining and defending is how I spent the last 30 years of my life. When I came to America in 1949, many physicists wouldn't even shake my hand. Hands that had actually built the bomb wouldn't touch mine.
And if you think you're making it any clearer to me now, you're not.
Margaret, I understand his feelings.
I don't. It's so easy to make you feel conscience-stricken. Why should he transfer his burden to you? Because what does he do after his great consultation with you? He goes back to Berlin and tells the Nazis he can produce atomic bombs.
But what I stress is the difficulty of separating 235.
You tell them about plutonium.
I tell some of the minor officials I have to keep people's hopes alive.
Otherwise, they'll send for the other one.
Diebner, very possibly.
There's always a Diebner at hand ready to take over our crimes.
Diebner might manage to get a little further than me.
Diebner?
He might, he just possibly
He
might.
hasn't a quarter of your ability.
Not a tenth of it. But he has 10 times the eagerness to do it. It might be a very different story altogether if it's Diebner who puts forward our case at our meeting with Albert Speer instead of me.
Ah, the famous meeting with Speer.
But this is when it counts. This is the real moment of decision. It's June 1942. 9 months after my trip to Copenhagen. All research canceled by Hitler unless it provides immediate results. And Speer is the sole arbiter of what will qualify. And we've just had our first sign that our reactor is going to work. 13%. Our increase in neutron growth, 13%. Not much, but it's a start.
June 1942. You're slightly ahead of Fermi in Chicago.
Only we don't know that. But the RAF have begun terror bombing. They've obliterated half of Lübeck and the whole center of Rostock and Cologne. We're desperate for weapons to strike back with. If ever there's a moment to make our case, this is it.
Don't ask him for the funding to continue.
With the reactor, of course we do. But we ask for so little that he doesn't take our program seriously.
But you tell him about plutonium.
No. I don't tell him about plutonium, not Speer, no. I don't tell him the reactor will produce plutonium.
A striking omission, I have to admit.
And what happens? It works. He gives us just enough money to keep our reactor program ticking over. And that's the end of the German atomic bomb. That's the end of it.
But you continue with the reactor.
We continue with the reactor. Because now there's no danger of getting it running in time to produce enough plutonium for a bomb. We go on with the reactor, all right. We work like madmen on the reactor. We have to drag it all the way across Germany, from east to west, from Berlin to Swabia, to keep it out of the bombings, to get it out of the hands of the Russians. Dieter tries to hijack it on the way. We managed to get it away from him, and we set it up in a small village in the Swabian Europe.
This is Heigerloch.
There's a natural shelter there. The village inn has a wine cellar cut into the base of a cliff. We dig a hole in the floor for the reactor, and I keep that program running, under my control, until the bitter end.
My dear Heisenberg, with respect now, with the greatest respect, you couldn't even keep the reactor under your control. The reactor was going to kill you.
It was never put to the test. It never went critical.
Thank God. Perrin and Hambro examined it after the Allies took over. They said that there were no cadmium control rods. There was nothing to absorb any excess neutrons, to slow the reaction down if it overheated.
No control rods, no.
You believe the reaction would be self-limiting?
That's what I originally believed.
Heisenberg, the reaction would not have been self-limiting.
By 1945, I knew that.
So if it had gone critical, it would have melted down and vanished into the center of the Earth.
Not at all. We had a lump of cadmium in the hand.
A lump of cadmium? What were you proposing to do with a lump of cadmium?
Throw it into the water.
What water?
The heavy water, the moderator that the uranium was immersed in.
Oh, my dear Heisenberg, by this time you'd all gone mad.
We had this fantastic neutron growth, 670% growth.
You lost all contact with reality down in that hole.
Another week, another fortnight, that's all we needed.
It was the arrival of the Allies that saved you.
A little bit bigger and the chain would have sustained itself indefinitely. We only need a little more uranium. Weizsäcker and I set off to try to get our hands on Dieters, another hair-raising journey across Germany. No transports, of course. Constant air raids. We try bicycles. We never make it. We end up stuck in a little inn in the middle of nowhere, listening to the thump of bombs around us. On the radio, someone playing the Beethoven G minor cello sonata.
And everything was still under your control.
Under my control, yes, that's the point. Under my control.
Nothing was under anyone's control by that time.
2 more weeks, 2 more blocks of uranium, and it would have been German science that achieved the first self-sustaining chain reaction.
Except that it had been done in Chicago 2 years earlier.
We didn't know that.
You didn't know anything down in that cave. You were as blind as moles in a hole. Parents said that there wasn't even anything to protect you against all the radiation.
We didn't have time to think about it.
My dear Heisenberg, my dear boy.
But by then the reactor would have been running.
I should have been there to look after you.
That's all we cared about, to get the reactor running, to get the reactor running.
You always needed me there to slow you down a little. Your own walking lump of cadmium.
And what if I had died then? What would I have missed? 30 years of attempting to explain? 30 years of reproach and hostility? Even you turned your back on me.
You came to Copenhagen again. You came to Tisville.
It was never the same.
No, it was never the same.
I sometimes think that those last few weeks at Heigerloch were the last happy time in my life. In a strange way, it was sort of peaceful. Suddenly, we were out of all the politics of Berlin, all the bombing. The war was coming to an end. All we had to think about was the reactor. And we didn't go mad, in fact. We didn't work all the time. There was a monastery above the rock above our cave. I used to retire to the organ loft in the church. Play Bach fugues.
Look at him. He's like a lost child. He's been out in the woods all day, running here, running there. He's shown off. He's been brave. He's been cowardly. He's done wrong. He's done right. And now the evenings come and all he wants is to go home, and he's lost.
Silence.
Silence.
And once again, the tiller slams over, and Christian is falling.
So near, so slight.
Once again, I look up from my work, and there's Neil sitting in the doorway, silently watching.
So, Heisenberg, why did you come to Copenhagen in 1941? It was right that you told us about all the fears you had, but you didn't actually think that I was going to tell you what the Americans were up to.
No.
You didn't actually think that I was going to stop them.
No.
You were going back to work on it, no matter what I say.
Yes.
So then why did you come?
Why did I come?
Yes. Another draft. And this time we shall get it right. This time we shall understand.
Maybe you'll even understand yourself.
After all, the workings of the atom were difficult to explain. We made many attempts, and each time we did, they became more and more obscure. We got there in the end, however. So, another draft, another draft.
And once again, I go through that evening in 1941. Crunch over the familiar gravel, and tug at the familiar belt. What's in my head? Fear, and the absurd importance of someone bearing bad news. But there's something else as well. You can almost see its face. Here it comes. Something bright, eager, and hopeful.
I open the door.
And there it is. His eyes light up at the sight of me.
He's smiling his wary schoolboy smile.
And I feel a moment of such consolation.
A flash of such pure gladness.
As if I'd come home from a long journey.
As if a long-lost child had suddenly appeared on the doorstep.
Suddenly I'm free of all the dark, tangled currents in the water.
Christian is alive. Harold, still unborn.
The world is at peace again.
Look at them. Father and son, still. Just for a moment, even now we're all dead.
For a moment. Yes. It's the 20s.
And we shall be able to speak to each other and understand each other in the way we did before.
And from those two heads, the future will emerge. Which cities will be destroyed and which will survive? Who will die and who will live? Which world will go down to obliteration and which will triumph?
My dear Heisenberg.
My dear Bohr!
Come in. Come in.